So you're losing tenders because you need to be ISO certified, but you've got absolutely no idea what the ISO standards are. So come with me today as I'm going to teach you the basic overview of what the clauses mean. The reason why I know how to do this is because in the last 90 days, I've had multiple businesses certified to 3 different standards. So this is clause 4, the context of the organization. Now, what does that really mean? It's about understanding who we are as a business and the people we're serving. So the first thing that we need to do is look at our internal and external factors. Now, you most commonly find these within SWOT or PESTLs or even business plans overall. But this is sort of a strategic overview and looking at the things inside the business and the things outside the business that might impact the performance. After that, we're going to look at our interested parties. Now, that's the standards way of what we used to know as stakeholders. And so that's kind of a language barrier. But basically, we're looking at our stakeholders. We're going to look at their needs and expectations. And then we're going to look at the ways that we are meeting those needs and expectations, whether they're with systems or controls, whatever it is, to make sure we meet them. After that, we're going to define the borders of the business. We're going to define where the organizational boundaries are and the boundaries of our activities. What this is called scoping the management system. The idea is that if we put everything within the box, then we can make sure that the things that fall outside of the box are out of scope. It's important to put things within that box so that we don't start chasing rabbits down rabbit holes. Clause 5 is leadership, and this is all about how we demonstrate that leadership and how we show commitment to the standard. One of the main things that we're going to do in this area is that we're going to establish a policy. Now, depending on what standard you're going for, that policy in alignment with that standard. If you're doing multiple standards, then you might end up with something known as an integrated management system. And inside that integrated management system, you might have one overarching policy known as an IMS policy. The main point here is that leadership needs to assign roles and responsibilities and authorizations across the organization. And that top management need to show that they're actively involved and they're accountable for the system, and that they need to ensure that that policy is understood and applied across the business and is reviewed regularly to make sure that it still aligns with the strategic direction. Also in this section, we need to ensure that our leadership promote a culture of quality or health, safety, or environment, depending on what standard you're going through. Our top management team also need to communicate the importance of complying to the management system, making sure that no one falls outside the bucket, that no one is above the law. Everyone needs to comply here, and it's top management's job to enforce that. Clause 6 is all about planning the management system. So the key areas around here is all about addressing our risks and opportunities, setting our objectives and planning on how we're going to achieve them, and then how we can plan our changes to the management system in a controlled manner. So some of the things that we'll find here is our risk-based thinking and integrating that into our processes, along with establishing objectives along the SMART parameters, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. We also need to evaluate the impact of any changes before we implement them. So this is where you would standardize those processes. This is also where you'll find risk assessments become an important part of the system. And it's also where we find risk registers and change management processes. Clause 7 is all about supporting the management system. So this is where we need to provide the necessary resources, and that's across all the domains: people, infrastructure, the environment, and the equipment. We need to make sure that we have the necessary resources to maintain the management system. This is also where we need to ensure that we have competent personnel, and this is where we'll start to do skills assessments, and we'll also maintain competency and license registers. This is also a place where we need to ensure awareness and communication of all the documented information. So this is where we start to begin document registers, and this is the place where we start to have SOPs or standard procedures. A big part of the considerations here is that we need to assess and provide the adequate resources. We need to maintain training records and assess their effectiveness. We also need to establish some communication strategies to ensure that we're communicating the right information. And then we also need to control and maintain our documented information with procedures and records. Section 8. This is the operations. This is finally getting into it. This is where the metal meets the meat. Key requirements here is that we need to plan and implement and control processes to make sure that they meet our requirements. It's also where we need to determine and review our customer requirements. And we also need to control our external provisions of our products and services. So what that means is we need to control things that come from outside suppliers, whether or not they be people doing services on our behalf, or whether or not that's products that we're bringing into the business that we're going to then utilize within our product or within our service. This is also the place where we need to manage our production and service provisions. This includes identifying them, tracing them, and preserving them during their post-delivery activities. So this is where we will start to have contract numbers and job numbers and things like that to ensure that we're maintaining those records across the different areas. That we need to consider the compliance aspects, which is maintaining control over our outsourced processes, establishing clear operational procedures and work instructions, and validate any special processes where output cannot be verified by monitoring or measurement. It's also where we need to implement effective change and non-conformity control. Clause 9, performance measurement. The key areas here is that we need to monitor, measure, and analyze the performance of our management system over time. What we need to do is we need to conduct internal audits here, and this is where we conduct management review meetings, which is a type of meeting where we'll review the system as a whole and make sure that it's still fit for purpose and achieving its intended outcomes. The things that we really need to consider for compliance here is defining what needs to be monitored and measured and how frequently that needs to be measured. We also need to establish an internal audit program and ensure impartiality of our auditors. So what that means is that we have neutral third parties audit different sections so that we don't have any biases, or we at least limit them as best we can. The other side is we need to ensure that top management conducts periodic reviews of the management system as a whole, which we do through those management review meetings. And the idea is that top management ensure that the system still aligns and that it's still being performed appropriately. This is where you'll find KPIs, and this is where you'll find other performance measurement tools, where all the charting takes place. This is where the math guys love. The last clause within the standard is clause 10, which is all about continual improvement. The main key ideas here is that we're going to identify opportunities for improvement, we're going to manage any non-conformities and corrective actions, and we're going to drive that continual improvement throughout the business. So what we need to do for compliance here is that we need to establish processes for managing and recording non-conformities. We've set our standard throughout our planning phase. Now, if we don't ever meet that standard for some reason, whether it's a defect or there's some sort of issue, we need to record that and then control it. The other thing that we need to do here is we need to analyze the root causes of those non-conformances so that we can take corrective action. And then finally, we need to monitor any trends or use any data for continual improvement. So everything that we talked about in clause 9, we'll take that data and we'll analyze it to find areas in which we can improve. And then we need to promote a culture of being proactive and continually improving moving forward. That's the main outline areas of what you need to do in clause 10. So I hope you enjoyed this brief overview of the standard and the clauses within it. In the next few videos, we're going to start breaking down those clauses more specifically, and we're going to look at some tools or some activities that you can do in each standard to make sure that you meet compliance moving forward.